Hello there, everybody. So this is Great Johannes speaking at the Great JMK on TikTok. I do my weekly live stream, or I am doing my weekly live stream in proper English. I wanted to make this a bit of an interactive episode, so you can just ask me questions and I'll respond to you verbally. Let's see. I've got alerts in the chat box. All right. I suppose it's possible if you turn your screen on TikTok now you can see it in horizontal as well. I don't know for sure if that will work out for you. So instead of talking about everything that's going wrong in Europe and in the West, why don't we start planning for what we want to do, right? How do we get rid of the sort of people like France's President Macron or Olaf Scholz? I guess there's new elections coming up in Germany in February because Olaf Scholz, their chancellor, lost his credibility or whatever, if he ever had any. Uh, but that's not the point. The point is, why do we keep being stuck with all these just totally bad people who whose motives we don't even quite understand? They're probably just extremely super materialistic. We are living in the age of materialism, after all, the age of consumerism and of economic squander, really. I think every year 100 billion new pieces of clothing are produced on this planet, and 95% will be thrown away within 3 months. That is just extremely, extremely wasteful, right? So you can start thinking about things like planned obsolescence. Why do we make light bulbs and computer screens and phones and so on that have to be replaced every 3 months or every year or every 2 years? Um, yeah, hello from Minnesota. Yeah, I am in the Netherlands. So we must have a massive time difference here, time zone difference. Uh, I think at this point it's just completely useless to try to complain about everything that's going wrong, and we need to really know what we are going to do. Let's see, it's 9 p.m. over here. Yeah, 7 hour difference. And I thought I would just start this stream by telling you a little story. It's a metaphor for life. I may have told the story before in some other episode, but I can't remember if I did. I went hiking once in Sweden because I like the pine tree forest there, right? And it was going to be something like, I don't know, 20-kilometer hike or so. You can do that in a day, 4 hours, 5 hours. It was a bit cold, but as it goes in cold places, if the wind is all right, if the sun is out, it may be cold, but once you start walking, your body heats up, and you find out you actually brought too many layers of clothes, so you get pretty sweaty. Anyway, I was walking this trail. It started at the front, at the base of a small church. So you're facing the beautiful church, right? And I started hiking, just following the arrows, right? It's a marked trail. First, you walk through this pine tree forest, some trail that moves a bit up a hill for I don't know 5 kilometers or so. Then you enter this. For the next 10 kilometers or so, you will be walking through Sweden's super rural small towns, crossing farms and so on. I remember seeing two women on horseback. They had really tall horses, big horses, doing some horse riding. I saw wild deer resting, basking in the sun. Um, I also took a few detours because I lost. It's a marked trail, about it's been marked like ages ago, so I couldn't always see the next arrowhead or so. So I got lost. Got lost, and by the time you realize you lost 20 minutes. You have to walk back to the next point you can remember where you saw, right, and then try again, right. And then the final 5 kilometers, it was uphill. You're crossing this farm again. You come up to this vantage point with a beautiful view of a small rural town down below with a small little church. The church that you started at is right there, down there. You can see all the thick pine tree woods all around you. It's just very serene, very beautiful. You see the lights over here and there. There's lots of houses everywhere. Nothing crowded. Like the houses here are quite separated from each other. So here's one, there's one, there's one. So you see the lights of people as the night falls, it becomes darker, right? So you spend just 2 or 3 minutes or maybe 5 minutes atop the hill enjoying the view, and you get bored already. And you're thinking, okay, what's next? What's next, right? And then you come down. At this point, it's dark already. You go through this thick forest in a sort of valley for a little bit. And as you emerge from that forest, you arrive at the backside of that church where you started. But the backside is where they have the cemetery. And that's when I realized, wow, that's so clever. Like you get people to do the whole tour, a scenic route, right? You spend a minute or two, near the end of your hike, you spend a minute or two on that vantage point, looking out over the small town and the beauty of nature, right? And then you're thinking, this isn't it. There's more, right? And you go down and there's the cemetery. And that's a metaphor for life. You spend a large portion of your life working on your career, building up your talents. This can take you 50 or 60 years before you really feel like you've achieved something in terms of a regular career, right? Then you become, I don't know, a senior manager or CEO or whatever, right? Most people never become CEOs, don't even want to, right? But at some point you feel like, okay, well, this is it. And then you may be in your 60s already, in your 70s, right? And then it's like, okay, what's next? And then there's the cemetery. That was it. So the hike trail informs you about something. It communicates something to you. You better take the time to stop wherever you're enjoying yourself, right? Wherever you're on this trail, wherever you are, whatever, like I told you, the women on the horses and the deer that I saw, at least I remember taking the time to enjoy the scenery. Because if I hadn't done that, if I had raced the trail to the top, right, I would have just entered into the cemetery again, right? So the moral of the story is you're not supposed to live life fast. You're supposed to slow down a little bit to enjoy your day, to actually feel yourself. Do you even feel yourself? There's people who hardly feel their own bodies, right? Like they can sit on a chair and then they have to describe, what do you feel? Well, they can hardly feel the chair under their butt, right? Other people have intense sensations and feelings running and racing through their own body. I probably am one of those people, right? And for us, it may be a bit more difficult to contain ourselves. Like I might feel like getting angry or shouting at people, and I say, "Oh, I can't do that." Right? It's not nice, right? Because I can be very emotionally explosive, right? And like simple experiences can have like a massive impact on me. I feel like electrified, like whoa, And other people just don't have that at all. They don't feel that. So I'm glad I took the scenic route and I took the time to suck it all in, right? To enrich myself internally, right? So when I arrived at the vantage point, I too was a bit, impatient to think like, okay, there's got to be more. And then you go down and you find the cemetery, right? And there's no escape. You can race to the end and you'll die, or you can take the scenic route and you'll die anyway. So what do you prefer? My advice, well, actually, whoever designed that hiking trail that I'm talking about really understood something about life, right? Whoever designed that hiking trail knew, you can't escape death, right? And this is to show you, memento mori, remember you're going to die. Remember you're going to die does not mean you will be depressed every day thinking of dying. It means you take the time to suck life in while you still have it, right? And that is what I think we need to do with Europe. Not the European Union, that's just all political hoo-ha. But Europe, right? We are collapsing economically speaking, right? So let me get my comment section out here so I can start talking to you a little more, right? we in Europe may face the end of our economic system soon. We will experience it maybe in the next 5 years already. And then what? Just the cemetery. We're just going to lie down and die, right? No. This gives us the opportunity uh, to reinvent ourselves and to reinvent the whole idea of life and living. This whole notion that everything is just matter in motion, everything we do during the day from 9 to 5 seems to be involving shipping goods around and shipping people around, right? And getting the resources and digging into the soil to find more copper or something, so we can build more whatever, right? Microphones or something, right? And that's the trouble with it all. The whole world system has been organized in such a way that it emphasizes consumption but also squander. And we're consuming more than we need, and then we're even squandering that which we purchase for the consumption part. For example, every aspect of our life is affected by this squander. If you buy yogurt in your supermarket, you think you can't possibly do that wrong, right? You just buy yogurt. But usually the yogurts you see in the store are low fat. Now, why is that a problem? Because if you buy low fat anything at all, it means your stomach will not be saturated that quickly. You can basically eat more. This is why I have trouble eating pastas. Pastas is lots of carbs and sugars. There's hardly any protein or fats in there. So you can eat a whole ton of pasta and still feel that you're not satisfied. I always have a second plate of pasta, and that's when I get sick, I get sick of the pasta. But if I would eat a good steak, and I don't mean just the red meat, but a good proper steak with some fatty tissue on it, like a good ribeye steak with the fat, and then I eat the fat, and then I can barely finish the steak because my stomach is signaling already, hey, you're full. Even though physically the stomach is barely half full, right? But it's signaling to me, I've eaten enough, you're done. So the whole low-fat cult that they sell you on TV is a scam. It's a scam to get you to eat more and buy more and squander more. And the same with clothing. We buy clothes that may last only two or 3 years, and after 6 months it's going to be out of fashion. And why not throw it away at the end of the season and buy new clothes every season? So you buy new clothes 4 times a year. That's at least that's what fashion brands would want you to do, right? So the fashion brands, the clothes companies and so on, they all want you to buy and squander, buy and squander. It's like that movie with Wall-E, By and Large. The company is called By and Large in the movie Wall-E. They have to, in that movie, humans have to escape the planet because they've polluted it too much and they have to live in a spaceship, right? Yeah, pasta is just sugar, exactly. That's why I keep eating it until I get sick because it just does not satisfy. But if I would eat, real food, I wouldn't eat so much. I wouldn't stuff my stomach so much, right? I live in the Netherlands, Air Johns, and that's what I want to change in Europe. We have become a depleted people, especially in the Western world. We are chasing external needs like pasta or, drink, alcohol, clothes, whatever we think we need to fill that void within us. Why not? I have to scratch my ear a bit. It's an itch. But why not turn this whole world system on its head and say, okay, why do we feel empty? Why do we feel depleted? And why do we crave so much to fill that never-ending, that infinite void? I think the answer is it's because in Europe we've become very atheistic and materialistic. It goes hand in hand, of course. Atheistic materialism is the same thing, basically. And it doesn't matter to me even which God or which religion you want to believe in. The point is, if you truly connect with a divine spirit, that will fill your heart, your mind, your soul, your body. You will feel that connection with yourself and others, right? Uh, and then basically, what you're going to do is you're going to live a very different life. I always imagine that when we break free from materialism in Europe, we have the opportunity to choose um, what basically was called German idealism, Deutscher Idealismus. German idealism is the idea that um, human beings are animated by divine souls, by divine spirits, by God, basically, right? And therefore, when you work with that as a foundation, right, you start living more from within your soul, living from the soul, living from the spirit, and so on, rather than focusing on the external, right? And I wonder, like, what really happened. When did we begin doing this? It was the industrial age, which started in England, was then very rapidly also copied by Germany. Germany eventually got better at doing the industrialism thing, all right? And then they became a threat to the British Empire, and that's when, the British basically set up Germany to be destroyed in World War II. And now today, Germany is being destroyed again by the USA. Basically, the way I see it, it's the USA working together with China, cracking down on Europe, destroying German industry, the Nord Stream pipeline, getting Germany to shut down its nuclear power plant under the guise of, climate change, the green movement. That's all propaganda. The whole green movement was made up by the Americans to fool the Europeans into thinking that we needed to start shutting down our industry, which we did. Very successful propaganda. Everybody fell for it. All right, and now we are looking at the consequences that, well, if you believe that the U.S. is a friend, the U.S. leadership, I'm not talking about the people, but if you believe that the U.S. leadership is a friend to Europe, you're wrong. The U.S. leadership is in bed with China, and they're going to destroy Europe to take Europe out as a global competitor, basically turning Europe into a market for goods, but then we will have to work for foreign owners. We become serfs and slaves, right? Right. All right. Okay. I promised you I was going to read your comments a bit. So let me just backtrack also a little bit. All right. Yeah, here someone mentions it seems like capitalism and consumerism doesn't have an alternative. The alternative used to be communism. Actually, I think communism and capitalism are two hands on the same state belly. Right? Basically, socialism is capitalism's marketing department, and capitalism is socialism's finance department. So, because socialism ends up breeding more people for the capitalist markets, right? Right? There's this meme where they show you a capitalist shooting consumers, but a capitalist will never shoot their consumers because you cannot do a repeat sell if your customer is dead. Capitalism keeps people alive. All right. Yeah, I was arrested in the Netherlands for speaking, for a tweet. One single tweet in 2022 was considered threatening to a Dutch politician. And the whole state system came after me and threw me in jail for 12 days, yeah. Eventually, I was acquitted of sedition, but they gave me 40 hours of community service, which I've already done in the meantime, so... Yeah, Europe is not compatible with any Abrahamic faith in my mind. Well, that's where the New Testament comes in. The New Testament is not really Abrahamic. There's a reason why the New Testament was written in Latin, right? It's a European language. It was written in Europe, basically. I like the story of Christ, very simply put, because Christ shows you how to live in the face of catastrophe, in the face of insurmountable evil, and simply do what is right without fearing death. It's all about overcoming the fear of death, right? That's why Christ dies and resurrects. This resurrection, of course, is a perfect theme for Europe. If European economy goes down, we resurrect ourselves. We're not going to defend Starbucks and Nike, the American companies. We're not even going to defend our European companies per se. We're going to think really deeply about What is it about Europe that we really want to preserve? If you had to pick a few things, just I got 5 fingers on one hand. Can I think of 5 things that we would really want to preserve in Europe? The heroic spirit, the idea of Christ's resurrection applied to our culture, so that when our civilization seems to be dying, we resurrect ourselves and we surprise the whole world, right? So that resurrection theme, the heroism, right? Um, Maybe I would like to have the old warrior caste system. In Europe, we used to have like the nobility, the warriors, and the priests. So the reinstatement of the classes, basically the old classes, right? The idea that um, to be upper class really means for you to be an individual who dares to go against the world and the gods, even, right? So that kind of upper class aristocratic ideal is what I would want to preserve. And maybe I can't think of the fifth one right now, but maybe you can think of a fifth one. Something we would really want to preserve in Europe, with which we would start over again, right? That's how we need to think about it, right? Or all right, let me go through some more of your comments here, because there's a lot of good stuff in here, you know. Capitalism is communism light. Yeah, maybe you're right about that. Yeah. All right. Mm. Right. Most Europeans have Christianity as their base identity. Yeah, that is true, although it is sinking. You know, lots of Dutch people and West Germans are practically atheist. Lots of white Europeans seem to be lost. They believe in technology. I heard an old man say this to me. So we've got technology now. We don't need God anymore. And then in the literal next sentence, he warned that maybe in 5 years, ASML, the Dutch tech company, might be bankrupt, and technology therefore will not save us. No, technology is an external thing. It will not save you. God, the way I understand it, is something internal within yourself, right? That cannot be destroyed, right? Yeah, Klaus Schwab, right? Yeah, the American people, you know, the white Americans, yeah, they have the same damn problem. So of course we can relate as people, but our leadership, who somehow managed to control and nudge us all, and nudge our behavior around, ooh, we can't go on with them. People like you know, Joe Biden or Emmanuel Macron of France, but even Trump. I totally supported Trump in 2016, but Trump in 2024 now, have you heard him talk? He's slow now. He's not quippy anymore. He's not quick anymore. He's also senile. You got another senile leader. You know, what's he going to do? He's in bed with the Zionists. He's not going to do anything for us, you know? Yeah, you give your life for Europe. Your family comes from there, yeah. Yeah, churches are empty and Islam is taking over. Not really. Islam isn't taking over, right? They're living off of our welfare, and if we quit paying it, they would starve. That's not really the same thing as taking over, but okay. You know, I don't think pagan stories are less valid, but you know, if you want to go pagan, you have the story of Hercules, which is similar, right? It's about Dionysus. Yeah, the Greek god Dionysus also has this theme of resurrection. Uh, no, money won't matter in the future. All money will be worth nothing. So it's all about, if your money is worth nothing, what do you have to survive? Your skills, your knowledge, your experience, the people you know, the people you live with. And those things will not be that easily taken away from you. Your skills, your knowledge, even if you lose everything you have, you still have your, all right, your imagination and so on. So that's why the focus needs to shift from these external means like money. Like in the USA, people ask you like, how much are you worth? And I would find that a bit of an offensive question. I'm not worth much anyway, but even it's in terms of class, like that's a low class question. You don't ask people how much they're worth. It's a bit, you know, not done in Europe. Um, it would be better to ask more something like, okay, what do you believe in? Or, you know, what are your skills? What are you good at? You know, that's a much better question, because then it really focuses it away. We turn the focus away from the materialism, money and stuff, how much you're worth, toward what can you do? What are your skills? What are you good at? And those are the questions we should be asking ourselves and others. The past 5 years, I've been really practicing speaking and speech writing. I do a lot of podcasts. You see me on TikTok. If I compare myself with 5 years ago, I could not. 5 years ago, I could not do a 1 hour podcast like I'm doing now. I would just. I wouldn't have anything to say. I would not be able to somehow turn my thoughts into words in a meaningful way and keep a conversation going. I just couldn't do it. So these are skills you can train, right? Even if you're old like me, right? Lately, I've been picking up more and more skills. I started practicing drawing, learning about how to draw well. No, I'm not Leonardo da Vinci, right? I'm not Michelangelo, but I'll definitely get somewhere. Say in a year or two from now, I'll show you some of my drawings, because I started teaching myself drawing because I want to show people what I see in my dreams, and I want to also visualize that for myself to help myself understand it better, right? Why do I see these things, right? And I spent a week of my life working in some warehouse, and I saw, the sort of observant fellow that I am, I saw the hierarchy of people. At the bottom, you have these people. They're almost dogs. They don't talk. They're almost mute, right? Their communication is very concise and short and simple, right? But they work really, really hard. They're shoving boxes around. They're shoving wardrobes around. They're shoving furniture around, doing really tough, hard work, hardly talking, right? And they're like that. They just have nothing to offer. They're slaves, basically. We pretend as though slavery doesn't exist anymore. But of course, slavery as a principle is preserved in those kinds of people who have very small mental capacities, right? But are still willing to do the work. And I guess you need those people in a society, right? You need people to do the slave work that others wouldn't like to do, right? And then there's also a class of people who can make money by talking, the managers and so on, right? Managers and lawyers and officials and bureaucrats. They can do more with words and talking. So there's a class difference. Are you just a laborer who doesn't need to talk, or are you someone who needs to talk to do their job? It's a class difference, whether you like it or not. I don't have to like it, but that's just how it is, right? And then you have this leisure class who basically extract and exploit the profits of their society, even though they might not have verbal abilities. Have you heard Alex Soros speak, the son of George Soros? Alex Soros is a multi-billionaire, right? And although he has a PhD in something, he has no speaking ability. When he tries to talk, he sounds like a 6-year-old who doesn't know what he's talking about, right? So apparently, money doesn't buy all the skills, or at least not without practice, dedicated practice. So even if you are super rich, you want to get good at something, you better go and practice every day until you get really good at it, right? Because your money doesn't buy that. Money does not buy your personal effort. You still have to put in the personal effort, right? Yeah. I do keep a dream journal, Randolph. Yeah. For the past few years, I've been tracking the dreams that I can remember. I think I must have recorded over 70 or 80 of them. And I obviously, I'm not going to tell people about what goes on in all of these dreams. I'll disclose some of the dreams, but my dreams are massive. I'm like traversing these massive open worlds with lots to do, lots of people, lots of different adventures. Like one dream could have like 3 different adventures, all right? And it's tied together in a sort of storyline. That's what I find the hardest to remember is what was the purpose of this dream? What was like the grand story, right? And then the plot, right? But I do remember often scenes from dreams, like I did something here like this, such and such. And yeah, it informs you. I even have come to believe that some of my dreams contain precognitive information, meaning it's telling me something about something that's going to happen in the future. And if you learn to discern those dreams that are informative or merely entertaining to relieve stress or something, and then there's the dreams that tell you what's going to happen to you in the future. If you start recording your dreams, you're going to notice this certain quality of dream that is precognitive, tells you what is going to happen to your own life, right? And about other things as well. Uh, and so that is something to watch out for. This is for the experts, of course. Uh, the whole idea of precognition, we have to say that science says that that doesn't exist. There's no precognition. You can't foresee the future. And then of course people in the world of psychology and psychiatry say that yeah, it is possible. Most famously, for example, Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, uh, favorite of Jordan Peterson, for example. Yeah, he wrote a lot about this. Yeah, yeah, it is possible to foresee at least some events that will perspire in the future. Oh, this is Groyer Nationalist. Hey, is that really you? Yeah, I watched a couple of your videos. Yeah, good work. Uh, are you more fan of reform or revolution? Well, no, not reform. As in, we take what exists and we just fix little things. No, the whole principle of our society is wrong. What I call the world system is materialism and consumerism and squander. That's nothing to live for. That's nothing to take pride in. We're all just lemmings running off of a cliff in this system. So yeah, it has to be a revolution where you well, I have to be careful with my words because I was actually arrested for using the word overthrowing. But let's say we need to overthrow the ideology that underpins all of this. We need to overthrow the fundaments of this whole economic system that basically forces us to live a life that we do not enjoy, a life that does not offer us salvation that we seek. I mentioned someone, there's a book that I read that explained this succinctly, is true salvation does not come from progress, but from a conversion, from a break with the past. So we've come up to here and then we say, no, this is the wrong way. This is not what we want. We go somewhere else, another way, or perhaps even back. All right. Yeah, revolution then is the answer. Revolution in the reactionary sense, perhaps, like we're also going to push back against so many things that have gone wrong, right? Why is it that the leadership in the West supports the whole trans movement so aggressively? Why is logic and reason apparently useless? We cannot fight the transgender proponents with words and reason and logic because they're not listening. They will actually throw you in jail if you are too reasonable and too logical about this, right? So, yeah, it is you, yeah. Yeah, dreams definitely have a visionary potential, yeah. You've had dreams about things that went on to happen. Exactly, I've had this too, but in my case, rarely, but yeah, it does happen, yeah. You have a dream, for example, where the police arrest you, but in your dream, you are released 2 weeks later. And then 6 months later, you are actually arrested, and 2 weeks later, you are released. So you dreamt about it, yeah. And the details can be quite eerie, like the details just all align. Yes, all these details in the dream is like exactly what I dreamt is going to happen. Right. Right. How many videos of you? How many videos of me have been taken down? I think I must have lost almost a dozen, more than a dozen TikTok accounts were banned. At one point, TikTok gave me a device ban where all my accounts were wiped in one go. And then I wasn't able to sign up for TikTok anymore. Any account I tried to sign up was automatically banned again. I had to reset my phone to get my Android a new Android ID, like a mobile. Your hardware has an ID or something, and I had to reinstall my whole phone to get a new Android ID, and then I was able to get back on TikTok on this account. I've had this account for almost a year now. I've gotten better at speaking in a way so that I won't get banned, because you have to. It's necessary, if you want to stay on TikTok and be able to talk to your followers, right? Uh, I think in terms of how many videos, hundreds. Yeah, I must have hundreds of my videos must have been reported, taken down, and banned. TikTok works both with algorithmic censorship and also user-based, report-based censorship. So if people would raid my account and start reporting all my videos, half of them would be taken down, right? So I even avoided saying things like black people. I don't say black people anymore. I say, I don't know, equatorial or something, or those people who never invented the wheel, those people. I wouldn't speak directly because TikTok's algorithmic censorship works with labels. So if you say black people are, that's a label. And if you label it like that, the algorithm will catch you very quickly. So you can't even use those words. So how do you think that revolution could go? In Europe, mass inflation, hyperinflation, starvation, we will not have money to buy energy to heat our homes. And at that point, basically, it's a smorgasbord. There will be opportunity for people with the right visions to turn chaos back into order. Right? And when I speak of order, I mean, you know, when you pretend everybody is equal, right, you get chaos. And order would be to reinstate what I just mentioned, the old class-based system of the warriors, the priestly class, and the aristocracy. I myself would consider myself a member of the priestly class. I would be a spiritual leader in this sense. Yeah, you know, technically the hierarchy works as follows. You know, the people bow to the king, but the king kneels before his priest. So the priestly class is the most powerful, but behind the scenes, right, on stage, you would have the aristocracy, the kings and nobility, and then the people basically working for their joint survival. Yeah? You need leaders, kings who are, you know, who have skin in the game, so that they need their people. This is nationalism. You are yourself of that people. Now, I know historically lots of noble families ruled over people that were slightly different, right? So the Habsburg Empire ruled over Slavs and Germans and so on, right? Or the British Empire at some point also had India or whatever. But if the difference between the leadership and the people is too big, you're going to have to work with puppets. That's what we're doing now, right? Lots of African former colonies are still being ruled by Europe and by the West. For example, many countries in West Africa are still under the rule of France, but they have puppet presidents, right? That's why you see this war in the Middle East where they take out Gaddafi and they take out Assad. Gaddafi and Assad are in a way were perhaps too close with their own people and therefore had to be removed so they can be replaced with puppets, right? So you get a lot of puppeteering now. Globalism leads to this puppeteering politics that we are suffering today. Right? Yeah, the equatorial people, it's just so ludicrous for people to think that Africans are going to take over Europe. In the Netherlands, like 20 years ago, you could see them in the Netherlands in the wintertime wearing ski jackets indoors, right? You see them like when we're waiting for the bus in the wintertime, you see the black people hiding near the ATMs inside the bank, waiting for the bus because it's warm inside, right? Or in Sweden, for example, you see the Swedish people waiting waiting for their train on the tracks, right, outside, and you see the black and the brown people hiding downstairs where it's a bit warmer, right? It's just absolutely ludicrous to think that these black and brown people can survive in Northern Europe when the heating is unaffordable for us. No. No way. It seems to be that there's something more to do than just the color of your skin, but that your whole body, the way it generates heat, plays a role in it. The way I understand it, your cells in your body have what is called a mitochondrium, and this is where heat is generated. Turns out that the sub-Saharan types of people, their mitochondria do not produce as much energy as white people's do, for example. So that we can, if you're a Norwegian person and it's 6 degrees Celsius outside, and the sun is out, you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, right? Uh, Whereas even in southern Italy, it's 20 degrees Celsius, and the Italians wear ski jackets because it's so cold. It matters. Yeah, your physical ability to generate heat from within matters, right? As that's nonsense. You may be an avid skier, but obviously you are moving and you're wearing a thick jacket. So uh, eugenics is also nonsense. It's another. If you don't believe in yourself or something, you want to fix yourself. It's like plastic surgery. It's just bullshit. The landscape ultimately will determine us. That's why I think all people living in big cities eventually will die out. You know. Yes, of course. Syria is now under the control of the Anglo-American Empire, together with the Zionist Israelis. Right. Right. There's a lot of reasons why Syria was important to the West. It's like a throughput for oil or gas from Turkey. They want to send it through whatever, Iran. So the question is, does Iran get to build a pipeline for oil through Syria to Greece, for example, to serve Europe? Or does Turkey get such a pipeline and send it to, I don't know, to Israel or wherever? So there's these geopolitical struggles that have a lot to do with energy and oil and gas, and then there's the oil fields in Syria and so on. Who gets access to that? Then there's also, if you want to attack Israel, you would do it from the Golan Heights, which is in southern Syria. You would shoot your rockets from there. Yeah, it's you can tell that if the West were secure in its power, it wouldn't need to do all this. It's the fact that the Western powers, meaning the USA primarily, uh, have a lot of insecurity about their position, meaning they are not in a stable position. They are in a sort of situation where they might lose their power, and they're doing whatever they can to stay in power, which is not really the behavior of a dominant power, but rather the behavior of uh, yeah, an insecure person, right? They know that they're trying to hold on to what they have, but it's costing them everything. They have to burn up, every last uh, ounce of energy they have, right? Yeah, yeah. Thoughts on Christianity being a Jewish psyop? Maybe the Old Testament was, right? But then again, there's so many different explanations. People tell me that no, in the Old Testament where they write about the Hebrew supremacists, those weren't really Jews and so on. Yeah, so it just depends on how you interpreted it. You know. Yeah, Greater Israel. Yeah, that's what they're doing. So you need to understand Israel as a fortress defending Anglo-American interests in the Middle East. The Middle East is important for the Suez Canal. I know that's in Egypt, but almost a third of the world's goods is transported through the Suez Canal, and it mostly benefits American and British companies and so on, right? And Europe needs it too. So you better have a military base there in case you need to defend the Suez Canal, right? And the Red Sea access. So that's why Israel wants to have access from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea and to the other rivers, the Euphrates and so on, right? They need that because in order to control the Middle East, right there is one of the linchpins of globalism, of global trade. The second linchpin would be the Taiwan Strait, that is now largely controlled by China, but there's a reason why the U.S. and Britain have their military presence there, right? Their carrier ships there, and then there's potential development for new linchpins like the Northern Sea route. If the ice if the polar ice is melting, then Russia would win a massive coastline, which surrounds also the USA. If you look at the globe from the top, Russia would be able to start attacking the US from the north. And Russia would have control over the Northern Sea Route, which is about even a week shorter than travel through the Suez Canal, which is also beneficial. When it comes to economic efficiency, yeah, you need to have a lot of you need to reduce your costs to the lowest possible, and that Russia would control that route. So, I checked, and it turns out that Russia actually possesses $200 billion. No, Billionen auf Deutsch. In German, billions, meaning trillions. $200 trillion worth of resources that are in Russia and in their soil, right? And the US itself only has $100 trillion worth of resources. So Russia, even though the Russian economy is about the size of Spain, in terms of resources, Russia is twice the size of the USA, which is why NATO obviously wants that. And of course, Ukraine is also one of the wealthiest countries in Europe in terms of what's still buried underneath the soil. The materials, right? Trillions. And that's why NATO needs to capture Russia, because if NATO doesn't capture Russia, well, China will get it. Then China will get everything, right? China will be able to make deals with Russia. I think China will get the Russian resources without having to go to war, but NATO will have to go to war. That's how I see it. In a way, I think China is using Russia to wage war on Europe, and the US is using Europe to wage war on Russia, even though at the same time, the US and China the leadership is probably in bed with one another, right? Chosen people. Something changed in the US media when this guy Luigi Mangione shot this healthcare CEO. I don't know all about it, but it's clear that the ruling elites in the US are scared that people, ordinary normies, might start shooting their puppets, their puppet masters, right? Their CEOs. All right. Even Saudi Arabia has pledged land to Israel. The rumor has it that the Saudi royal lineage is Jewish. They want David there, right? Right. So, yeah, Israel is obviously working on Greater Israel, the concept. Yeah, they have to do that. But they're not just doing it for themselves. They're doing it, to control global trade. And that is why I think there is an alternative. If we could somehow figure out how we could redesign this whole world system, move away from materialism, become less dependent on what is produced 1,000 miles away, and more autarkic, so that we can produce more of what we need locally in different ways. We will forgo some things, and other things we can do ourselves, and then all of a sudden we don't need globalism anymore. That's probably what we should do, but the way to do that is to teach your people skills. Ordinary people will have to acquire a ton of skills. They need to churn milk into butter, for example. They need to spin their own sheep wool into thread that they can then use to knit sweaters and so on. Those basics kind of skills need to be taught, and we're not doing that. But we will have to eventually. When Europe, I think Europe will have this development. We're going to witness this in the next 2 decades or so. This transition from being from having comfort that you pay for, you buy comfort. Like if I come home from work and I'm tired, I order food. Someone will deliver me food, right? I pay $20 for it, 30 euros or something, right? Oh, that's easy. It's convenient, right? We pay for convenience. But if we would somehow no longer be able to afford that, and it's very realistic that Europe's future will look like that in the next 5 or 10 years, that we can't afford these conveniences anymore. We'll have to do more ourselves. All of a sudden, people are going to prefer not to spend the money, but rather acquire the skill to do it themselves. And different people will specialize. Just like in ancient times, you had like a locksmith, and every town had a locksmith, and every town had a sheep farmer, and so on. Right? And so that's where it's going. So we're going back in a sense, but in a new modernized way. Uh, I would call it something like the re-enchantment of our people. Re-enchantment because we've lost our spark. If you want to put it that way, we've lost the fires in our souls that animate us to do more for ourselves. I want people to become extremely competent because then they no longer need globalism. A dependent people is a weak people, and they need the conveniences of globalism, and they need to work for that as 9-to-5 slaves, right? Whereas it doesn't have to be that way. There is always this alternative if we would only be daring enough to embrace it. We're going to learn all the skills we need to do whatever we can for ourselves. We will forgo some things, and we will do a lot of other things in-house, and then poof, we don't need globalism. Maybe we need nationalism. Right? Maybe nationalism is the answer eventually, right? Yeah, you think Luigi was a fall guy? Yeah, maybe. Yeah. My favorite empire is the Holy Roman Empire. All right. Why will Europe fall? We can't afford heating. The European industry is being destroyed. Germany's Volkswagen, Porsche, Audi, they've all been firing tens of thousands of people in the past year, past few months even. Without the German industry, there is no European industry. Germany, Western Germany is Europe's economic engine, and without it, everything else just falls apart. So we're going to have to think about what do we do when in my theory is that if we shut down German industry, then the local heating and friction is removed, and it will actually welcome cold weather front. Sorry. Oh, what's that? I don't know, cold weather fronts to arrive in Europe, making Europe colder, and then that's adding insult to injury. We're shutting down our industry, and then on top of that, it will be colder, and we will have even less fuel and energy available. Yeah, Europe is going down on this resort. I don't get it. I don't get why our politicians are not talking about this. They're talking about the war with Russia. Maybe they think, well, if we win the war with Russia soon enough in 5 years or so, then we'll have energy and then we'll be fine. I think we're not going to win that war, not even in 20 years. So if you add the war to the collapse of German industry and then the heating cost, if you take this all into account, Europe is toast. Europe is going to be as cold as Siberia 20 years from now, which I think is great because then all the tropical people will leave, Yeah, we need to protect the West the same way the East doesn't let us into their homes without beheading. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Porsche is moving to the USA. Yeah, German industry is moving abroad to the US, Dubai, and China. But then what will be left of Europe? Nothing. Yeah, green did kill the German industry. They shut down their nuclear power plants, and now they're importing electricity from Sweden, Norway, France, and the European electricity prices are now twice as expensive as those in the US and 3 times as expensive as in China. Yeah, we're killing ourselves. Yeah, maybe Germany needs a cold shock. I mean, I'm all for this kind of change because it will force Europeans to acquire the skills that I think are necessary to then disconnect from globalism as well. So there's a benefit in the downside, right? There's a benefit to the downside, yeah, and I'm going for that benefit. Yeah, the whole world is against us. I don't know, man. Thoughts on Trump annexing Canada? I don't know this. Maybe Canada is already part of the U.S. system anyway, right? All right, I think I'm gonna leave it at that for this episode. I usually try to fill up to an hour. I've been speaking for 55 minutes, so it's okay. Yeah, I'll be back next week every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Amsterdam time. That's GMT +1 or +2, I think. And then you can go to my website www.jmk.info. There you can subscribe to my newsletter. I'm also on Twitter at JohannesMKX. You can have a look there. All right, it's been nice talking to you all, and see you next week.